Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 3 of my Build Together series. Now in the last episode, we turned our attention to motherboards. We looked at thermal paste application patterns, mounted our CPU water blocks, and loaded the M.2 and RAM. We basically got to the point where our motherboards were ready to get installed into the cases, so that's where we're gonna pick up today. We have 3 beautiful cases that we're gonna get started with. We'll get a good look at them, strip them down, and then get our motherboards in. Plus, we will start with some of the case cables. Then we will turn our attention exclusively to the TUF Gaming Build. Remember the B550 board that we worked on in the last episode? We'll pick up from where we left off, and then we are going to completely finish that build in this video. And you're not gonna wanna miss out because that TUF Gaming PC is a giveaway that ASUS is doing for their summer PC DIY campaign that is going on right now. So you can head to this link for more info, but I will tell you a whole lot more about it in a little bit. So let's get rolling. Now you can go online, read all these blogs, and try to figure out which case is right for you, but I think the best thing to do is to go on YouTube and look for 2 types of videos. One would be your build videos, because these are really inspiring, they help get the creative juices flowing, and kind of help you figure out what it is you might want. Channels like GGF Events and Designs by IFR are really good for that. Then you have your other set of videos that might take an entire episode just stripping down and going over one particular case. Channels like Jay's 2 Cents and Hardware Canucks are a great resource for those. Then you have channels like Optimum Tech who kind of do a hybrid of both. The point is, there's a lot of content out there that you can ingest before you even spend $1, which is important because the last thing you want is to be buying pieces and then realize, ooh, it doesn't fit. So here are the cases to their corresponding motherboards. We're gonna get to each one in a second, but I do wanna mention that in general, there are 3 main sizes when it comes to motherboards. You have a mini ITX, an ATX, and an eATX. You might also hear micro ATX. Now, an example of a mini ITX would be the Z590 iGaming motherboard that we used in both the Taku and the Yulebeast builds in episodes 1 and 2. Whereas these two, the Crosshair 8 Dark Hero and the Maximus 13 Hero, are ATX boards. This big boy over here, the Extreme Glacial, is an eATX, which just means it's wider than a traditional ATX board. This silver case is Phanteks Evolve X, and it accommodates an eATX, so we'll pair that with our Extreme Glacial board. Next is the Inwin 303 Special Edition EK case, and we will mount the Maximus 13 Hero board. And last but not least, we have the Lee & 011 Dynamic Mini, which will be home to our Crosshair 8 Dark Hero board. So let's start with this Phanteks case. It is really sturdy, super solid. This one in particular is about $200 US. The goal here is we want to take everything out that's more or less removable, and we're going to do this together in the other cases as well. You don't want to accidentally scratch or break something, plus you want to give yourself the most amount of space and access for building. And these side panels are hinged and removable, which is really nice because not all hinged panels are removable. This case of the 3 has the most parts to remove, so it's a little bit more involved. And as you start to remove parts, it's important to remember how things go back and you don't want to lose any screws. Now some cases come with pre-installed fans like this one, but since we'll be using different ones, we're going to need to pull those out along with this part. This right here is a fan hub. I'll talk more about that later in episode 5 when we work on our radiators and fans. And another benefit to stripping down the case, it becomes a lot lighter to move around and work with. Next up is the EK Classic Inwin 303. This retails for about $370 US. This makes it an EK edition because the distro plate is pre-installed, which we're going to learn about in episode 6. This case has significantly less parts to remove. It's really just the 2 side panels. Now, along with your PC case, there's usually an accompanied box or bag that contain things like extra screws and brackets. This one came with a snazzy resealable bag. I am a big fan, plus it will help prevent your screws from getting lost. The bottom of this case is also unique because you can pop off the rubber dampers on the bottom, unscrew the feet, so you can mount things like a radiator and fan on the inside, which you're gonna see later in this build series. And next is the Lee & Lee 011 Dynamic Mini, which I'm probably most familiar with. If you follow my channel, this is the case that I used for my battle station rig and the all-red AMD build. This Lee & Lee is a great case because it's made well and it's versatile. It's a great representation of how far cases have come. For example, of the three, this is the only one that gives you the option of putting radiators in 3 different areas, yet it's the smallest design. The panels are held on by these attractive thumb screws, and I love that the dust filters are all magnetic. And similar to InWin, Lee & Lee also omitted the pre-installed fans, so strip down is that much faster. Now that we have officially stripped down the cases, we can finally install our motherboards. Now, I like to position the case down on its side so that you can drop the motherboard in rather than trying to install it in the upright position. Now, before we drop the motherboard inside, I just want to show you a few things. As you can see, there's these little nubs. They're called standoffs. That's what we're going to put the motherboard on top of, and then we will take the motherboard screws to secure it in place. Now, this motherboard has 8 screws, but inside the case there are 9 standoffs, so we're gonna remove the extra one. Sometimes the standoffs are exactly where you need them, other times you have to move them around, but if you have extras, I recommend removing them. Now, when we stripped down the InWin 303, I was so impressed with that little plastic resealable bag until I just realized the Fantex, it comes with its own little toolbox. You have a caboodle for all your screws, which is honestly really nice. So we're gonna pull out our motherboard screws. The manual shows you exactly which screws to use. Gently place your board onto the standoff and start screwing in your screws. I like to screw about 3/4 of the way, go around the board before I tighten each one up. But it's really important not to over torque because you can strip the standoff very easily. Now, if that happens, it's not the end of the world. You can replace the standoff, but generally you're not given a lot of spare parts, so just be careful. InWin and Hero board, you're up. Now, this time around, there's only 4 pre-installed standoffs, so that means we have to add 5 more. Then you're gonna find your motherboard screws. We need 9. Drop the board in and screw away. One of the holes is hidden under the heatsink that's covering our NVMe. So I'm gonna pop that off real quick to put the screw in place. Now, because this is an ATX board, we have to mount this additional motherboard extension bracket. It's gonna go in like this, and it will give us the 3 additional standoffs that we need. And just like on the Maximus Hero board, we're gonna remove this heatsink so we can get access to that additional motherboard screw. I've actually never done that in the past, so I'm really starting to rethink. Maybe I gotta go back on my old builds and add an extra motherboard screw in. But remember, don't over torque. Motherboards are in. I love the way they look. Next up is our case cables. We're gonna connect all the case cables to our motherboards. Now, most cases have a similar set of cables that control the buttons and the ports on the outside of your case. For example, like the power button, USB ports, and audio input jack. The location of where we plug in the cables is going to vary depending on the motherboard, but the actual pin layout is the same, so hopefully things will start to look a little familiar as we go from one to the next. The other thing though, I always recommend checking out the manual and look at the motherboard layout just to make sure you're plugging everything in the correct spot. There are 4 case cables that we're going to connect to the crosshair board. This is called the front panel audio header, and it controls the audio jack on the outside of the case. And this is called the system panel header. It's probably the peskiest to get in because they're really skinny, but these control things like your power button, the reset switch. This cable will power the Type-C port on the outside of the case, whereas this cable will power the other USB port. So let's jump to the Fantex case, and you're gonna notice a lot of similarities, plus we'll go in the same order. The first one is our audio header. Boom, very similar location. In this case, there's only a power switch, so it's a lot easier to plug in. Here are the cables to power our USB ports. And the cool thing about this eATX board is there's 2 ports for each one on this board. And this is an RGB header, which we're gonna save for later. Last up is the InWin with our Maximus Hero board, and we have 4 case cables. Our audio header, hopefully this looks familiar, also located toward the bottom left. The system panel header, and then our USB related cables. And again, this is an RGB that we'll save for later. And there we go, our case cables are connected. Now there is more to cabling, which we'll get to later on in the series, but I hope you found that helpful in kind of understanding what case cables look like. But now we are going to pivot to the super exciting announcement because you have a chance to win this PC. But before I tell you about it, let's watch the build cinematic. So what do you think? This was my first time building with TUF Gaming components, and I am over the moon with how cool this looks. This is the TUF Gaming GT501 case. It comes in white or black, but obviously this is the white edition case. Now I'll list all the specs down below. Now, in order to win this, you have to click on this link, which is also listed down below. And all you have to do is duet or stitch on TikTok and Instagram Reels your favorite PC building tip and use hashtag ASUSPCDIY, and that's it. How cool would that be if someone watching this video wins this PC? That would make me so excited. So definitely go to this link to learn more, and good luck. Now for the Yule-Base giveaway, which by the way, if you haven't seen episode 2, go back and check that out because in that video, I announced that I am giving this away. But I haven't quite figured out how I want to do it. And like I mentioned in the last video, I really want it to be meaningful, but truthfully, I've been so consumed with this video series that I haven't really had the time to think about that. So I promise you, I will think of something shortly and keep you posted. So that wraps up this episode. In the next one, we are going to take a deep dive into Unicorn Land as we start working on our GPUs, which was arguably the most stressful part of my first PC build. So I will show you that there is nothing to worry about as we take apart these beautiful 3090s and attach the corresponding EK water blocks. So you definitely don't want to miss out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!